Hey, you guys, welcome to, where are we? Wednesday Night Live. Super excited to have you join us. Go ahead and please like and share. When you come in, let us know where you're tuning in from so we can say hey. I have a wonderful guest on with me tonight. So I'm going to introduce you in just 1 second, Sarah, but I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to pop in.
That's okay.
And tune in here real quick. So share to, hey, you guys, come on in. Let us know where you're popping in from. Hey, we've got such a good topic, especially during the holidays. So before I introduce our wonderful guest, I know so many of you are like, oh, I love her. So come on in here and let's get to the meat of narc abuse and you thriving afterward. So I'm super excited. Hey, when you come in, let us know where
Hi, everyone.
Hey. So tonight I have Sarah Komodo, and oh my gosh, I said it right. Is that right? I did.
Right, yeah.
Sarah Komodo is a narcissistic personality disorder expert and founder of Narc Proof and Thriving. So I'm super excited to have her on. Hey, you guys. All right, we got some people from Australia. Hey. Okay, so let me just tell you a little bit about her because I think she's pretty amazing. And I'm going to let her share her story too. But she does have her own business. It's called Narc Proof and Thriving. And she's helped thousands of victims and survivors by educating them on narcissistic abuse. She has a 3-step signature system that she uses in her private groups and coaching sessions. And we'll give you that information tonight before you get off. And I love this. She shared this with me. She said that Sarah dreams of a world where everyone is aware that there are emotionally unhealthy people who pretend to love you while trying to destroy you at the same time with no regard for how you think or feel. And it's really, that statement is so powerful because it's unbelievable to think that people are actually like that, but they are. So welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Very excited.
I'm excited too. And I love that when I share that you're going to be on, we're like, yay. So make sure you guys share this. Okay. Hey, from the UK. Hey, Scotland. Hey, Australia. Hey, Kentucky. Welcome, you guys. So we want to dig right into it, Sarah. So please just tell us a little bit about yourself and your story. How did you get to doing this in the first place?
All right. So, about 5-6 years ago, or longer than that, actually, I found myself in an abusive marriage. I didn't realize it was an abusive marriage until the end. So because of the kind of person I am, kind, caring, compassionate, I realized that I was an empath. I didn't know at the time. I thought everybody felt the same way that I did. I landed in a relationship with someone. It went very quickly. Obviously, we got married. We had a daughter. And even it was like, months before we got married, I was saying, let's go to counseling, which there were plenty of red flags, but that was one of them. And he kept saying, no. If anything needs to be fixed, you need to go and get fixed. So like most victims of narcissistic abuse, we always think it's us. We need to try harder. We need to love harder. We need to give more and more and more of ourselves. There was no point where I looked at him as the problem. He had issues. And I was trying to help him through those issues. But there were red flags in the beginning, probably the first 3 months, but I swept them under the carpet. So we got married, had a daughter, and my journey started about 9 months before I left. I went to counseling to help him with his depression. He wouldn't go. I went on my own journey. Everything kind of fell into place. The psychologist didn't help me. I kind of did my own research and arrived at what I needed to myself. So I made a plan. Spoke to close family members in secret about this. I got a bank account, email address, private Facebook account, because he had all my logins, obviously, because, can't have any privacy. And I shipped out of there. As soon as I knew what was happening, I started doing a bit of healing, and I was out because I knew that was the only thing I could do, and it was the best thing for my daughter because nothing was changing. I'd exhausted all my options. And I know because I got myself out of it that I can help others get themselves out of it, and I have helped others. And it's more a case of realizing the threats that you always had. I know a lot of people are scared of their abusers because they, that's what they do. They try and grind you down to a place where you're so small, but you're actually more powerful than you think, and they are not as powerful as they think or you think.
I love that. I love that. At first, really, I want to touch on something you said, because when you went to therapy, you started to realize, wait a minute, something's wrong. And so you started taking steps. And I think that that's one of the most powerful things, because it's like, well, what do I do? And before we get into the meat and the bolt of it, I want to talk about how you said you changed your Facebook password, you got a bank account, you did these steps. And I think like almost right away, not right away, but you started to make some changes because he had all your passwords.
Yes. Yeah. The rapid changes happened about a month before I left, as in the bank account, the email address, the Facebook account, because he had all my passwords. And, if you have an email address linked to your Facebook, then it shows your contacts. So I had a completely brand new, obscure email address. And I was in a forum that suggested that, the lead up to you leaving could be the most dangerous.
Yeah.
I never experienced physical abuse, I guess, luckily, or, but everything but. So that put fear into me. I didn't think he was capable, and he didn't do anything, but I guess it's better to err on the side of caution. So I was kind of very hypervigilant, very anxious towards the end. Like, friends were helping me with getting packing boxes, and I had to hide them. I was packing small things slowly, and he noticed. It was a very stressful time. But I just left one day when he went to work. I had everything planned, the van organized. A friend came as soon as he left. And we packed as much as we could and got out of there. And then I sent my emails. I had my emails drafted ready to say, I've left. This is what you do with the utilities, and this is my proposed interim parenting plan. So I had everything.
Listen, let me tell you something. You talk about we have power. You took your power back. Let me tell you.
I absolutely did.
And I love that. And I hope that someone's listening realizes not everybody's situation is not the same. This is not the blanket. This is not the one all, for everybody. But understand that there are strategic steps that you can take when you're ready to leave the relationship. And so I love it. You had friends in place, a U-Haul in place. You had all these things in place that helped you to get. So I love it. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that part of your story. And I love, it's so interesting too, because you talk about not experiencing physical abuse. And it's so important that people realize that narcissistic abuse is not just physical. Domestic violence is not just physical. Abuse is not just physical. It's definitely a big part of it. There's so much more to it. Yeah. And so let's dig into that tonight. And I know that one of your specialties, which I want to talk about for a little bit real quick, is co-parenting / parallel parenting. Yeah. So to all of those that are out there that may be parenting with an abuser, let's talk a little bit about that. What does that look like for someone who's experienced narcissistic abuse?
Yeah, so obviously if you're parenting or if you share children with a narcissist, you will know how difficult it is. You are always going to be poked, prodded, and derailed. Anything you suggest will get countered by the narcissist. If you want to do one thing, it's not necessarily that they agree with the opposite, but they will do the opposite just to get a reaction out of you. When you understand how narcissists work, they operate on fuel. Fuel is their supply. Yep. Supply is you reacting to anything they say or do. When you get to a place of being indifferent and not reacting to anything they say or do, you are golden. They're still going to try. They'll still try because they're relentless. And you're still going to get triggered. But as you do the healing work, that deep healing work inside, you get strong from your core so that anything they throw at you gets deflected. You're going to get triggered, but you manage them, you nip them in the bud, and you move on. You learn how to communicate with them effectively, as in sticking to the facts, non-emotion, and basically not telling them what's happening, but you give options and suggestions, and you don't get involved in any drama that they try and bring up, because they will always use any communication to drag you into drama. If you fall for the bait, you are gonna spiral.
I love that. You said they will use any form of communication to create drama, and that is what they do. So limiting the communication is so very important. But I want to touch on something you said. You said that the deep healing work strengthens you at the core, which was so good, because you can't be broken and not healed and all that and think that you will have the strength to do a lot of these things. It does come from the healing work.
It does. We can read posts, we can watch videos. It feels like you're doing healing work when you do that, because it makes sense to you and you feel uplifted and inspired. But unless you go deep within and do that work, and nobody seems to know what that work is, and it's hard to kind of define it. But basically what I say to my clients is we strip the layers back, and the first layers are the most painful because you're going to have to dig deep and realize things about yourself, that not that it was your fault, but there are things that allowed this to go on as long as it did, because we are kind, caring, compassionate people, but we have no boundaries, or we lack in boundaries, and we're also maybe people pleasers, and we don't want to abandon the person that we love the most. But we have to realize our strength, and we have to put ourselves first, and that our children are also the motivation, because my big motivation was I didn't want my daughter thinking that this dynamic was normal or healthy.
Yeah. So true. I love when you talk about going deep, like peeling off the layers, because you know, and people are like, we're as survivors, we don't victim blame. There's none of that. But there's putting up a mirror and realizing that there's steps that we can take, steps that we have taken, that we're in the situation that we're in, and what can we do to get out of it and to stay out of it? You know, and peeling back those layers are uncomfortable.
Yes.
You know, and they hurt, and we can't skip that part.
No, there's no magic pill. I mean, I get asked the question, how long does it take to heal? My answer is, you know, how much work are you willing to do on yourself? And this is, not victim blaming, not victim shaming, because I'll be victim shaming myself. But we peel it back. It's going to be lonely. It's a journey. But the beauty is that as you peel the layers back, you get deeper to your core, and it becomes a beautiful journey of discovering who you are, realizing what your needs and wants are, speaking your truth, and not ever succumbing to anybody like that. Again, like my name is narc proof and thriving. You do become narc proof. Narcs are everywhere to varying degrees, but they're not going to try with you, because you are going to have this rock solid core, and your boundaries will be set. So I get people trying to push my boundaries today, like not necessarily in a romantic sense. And I have these little intuitions and these feelings, and this is what we ignore when we're in these situations. We ignore our better judgment, sweep it under the carpet because the person's great sometimes, or a great provider, or you know what will other people think? Whatever it may be, we may be embarrassed to even talk about it with anyone. But we need to realize our strength, because that is why we were targeted in the first place. We are powerful people. We have strength, and that's what they loved about us, but then they destroyed it or tried to.
That's so good. Can you touch a little bit, Sarah, on narc proof? And I love, we talk about something proof, waterproof. If you think about the narc proof, why did you name it that? I know you talk about because you have your boundaries up. And like you said, there's narcissists everywhere, right? And so becoming narc proof, what does that look like?
So becoming narc proof means that you still have those beautiful traits. Like when you come out of something like this, it can be quite scary that you maybe don't want to be kind, caring, compassionate, loving, empathic. You want to go the other way and, become hard and harsh and have your walls up. You need to have those beautiful traits and cultivate those, but you have your strength as well. That's what they try to destroy, your self-esteem and your strength and your confidence. Once you can have those beautiful traits, but be discerning with who you give those to, that's when you become narc proof. Like I realized I had no boundaries in place. I thought I did, but I didn't really know what they were. And I was just yes to everyone and everything, detriment of myself. I was also a people pleaser because I wasn't able to self-validate. I was worried about what other people thought of me. I didn't want to be seen as the bad person. So I was always the good girl. But that always hurt me and pleased everyone else. And I know a lot of us are in that position. So you may find that you don't have any boundaries in place. You may be a people pleaser. You may give people more chances than necessary. So people who target people like us try to grind you down and push those boundaries. And you'll know if you look back to the early days of your relationship, there were signs early on, but we ignored them because we didn't trust ourselves.
Yeah, that's so good. I love how you talk about discerning. When you're narc proof, you can discern, you can recognize, you can see what those signs look like. It's like when you were talking about it, I'm very visual, so they know I'm like visual. But say, for example, you put a fence up and the person knocks it down and you're just like, oh, well, they didn't mean to hit it. They just kind of, so you put it back up and they hit it again and you say, oh, well, they said they were sorry, and you put it back up. And time after versus, hey, you crossed this boundary, you knocked down this fence, this is not okay. And so sometimes we oftentimes just, we like we've set a boundary, but we keep pushing it because that person continues to push on it.
Yeah. And that's why people don't stick with boundaries, because it is hard and it is uncomfortable, because people will certain people won't like them, and certain people will try and push and push and push until they get their way. why and how boundaries work is when you're consistent and diligent and you don't break them regardless of the reaction. Like, the reaction doesn't matter. This is what I need and want, and that's final. There is no negotiating on that. And if you don't like it, then you can go. And that's good, because it tells you who's in your corner and who isn't.
I love that. So I'm going to just say that because, you know, I like to, if it's good, I want to pull it out. But one thing about boundaries you said is that they're consistent and they're diligent, regardless of the person's reaction. So if I have a boundary up and you react and you don't like it, that's okay. Your reaction is not going to change my boundary. Okay. So we're going to pull on this a little bit more, because oftentimes, you know, we have boundaries, but only with specific people, or we don't allow. If you have a boundary, it's something that protects you, keeps you safe, keeps you happy, keeps you sane. It's a boundary. And don't allow specific people to just jump over that boundary or push past it and to be okay. So boundaries are consistent, diligent, and regardless of the person's reaction to that boundary, the boundary still remains the same.
Yeah, because two things that can happen: either you get hurt or someone else gets hurt. You know, it's better that you don't get hurt, I think, because you are looking after your needs and wants by setting the boundary.
Yeah, and you're finally looking after your needs and wants, because oftentimes we find we're in these relationships, we haven't had boundaries. We're people pleasers. We're unable to self-validate, and we're like a yes people. So we actually haven't had boundaries.
Never.
And we've been traumatized while not having boundaries. We find the strength to put up the boundaries, stick with the boundaries. And anyone who loves you, cares about you, wants to be in your world, in your corner, will respect your boundaries.
Exactly.
Period. You know, I really liked how you said you were unable to self-validate yourself. And because of that, you were looking for that from the outside.
Yeah, and that's why it was easy to become a victim as well. Like, you know, I was always like, got to get good grades, got to be a good student, got to be the good girl, do the right thing, be a nice person. That's all great, but that was kind of going against my authentic self, because I ended up in situations where I wasn't necessarily happy. Like jobs, I was staying in jobs for longer than necessary. I was staying in relationships a lot longer than necessary that were not healthy for me. When you're not real and authentic because you don't know who you are, that's when you can be susceptible to these kinds of things. And when you get into a relationship with a narcissist, they want to mold you, and it's very easy for you to be molded into what they want.
Yeah, that's really good. I love how you talk about the authenticity though, because oftentimes when we're in an abusive relationship, we have no clue to who we are. If we're being abused in some sort of way, we don't know who we are. And the journey to that healing, into that thriving, is to understand and get to know who we are at our core, at our authentic self. You know, and I think that's really, really important. If you guys have any questions, please go ahead and put them down in the comments. We'll do our best to kind of get to them. So go ahead and put them in there if you have them. But I really like how you talked about the self-validation. I think it's very, very important. And I think that especially as people pleasers, coming out of that, we have to learn how to validate ourselves. I don't need you to tell me I'm beautiful, I'm smart, or I'm intelligent, or I'm important. That has to come from inside of me. And it's huge. That's key.
And nobody can take that away from you as well. So when people do validate you, it's great. But if people don't validate you or try and invalidate you, that's great too. It doesn't matter, because I like me and I'm happy with me. That's the place that we need to get to. You know, obviously we want to be liked, but if somebody doesn't like you, if you're comfortable in who you are and you know you're a good person, I don't care. You're not my person. I'm good.
I love that statement too. I always say, that's just not my person. That's not your person. Those are not your people. That's not your group of people. And that's okay. You're not for everybody, you know, and I definitely love that statement right there. Because it's very, very true.
Yeah. And as you become more authentic, those kinds of people fall away, and you only get people attracted to you, and you're attracted to them who are in alignment with who you are.
Very true. And when you leave an abusive relationship, you have to be very particular and very specific about who you allow in your space. There's flying monkeys. There's people that are still connected to the partner, the abuser. So it's very important that you protect your space.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, once you've been through something like that and you've come out of it, you may still be healing, but there's no way that you can allow people like that in your life again, because you've worked too hard. Like, that's with me. Like, I cannot give people chance after chance after chance. I worked too hard to get out of there, and I will not ruin that for anyone.
I love that. I say that all the time. I'm like, I fought too hard to get where I am. I'm not going to allow anybody to decide to come in and change who I am. Absolutely. I fought too hard to gain my self-worth, understand who I am, fight for myself and my children. There's no way you let anybody else come in and do that. And anybody can say what they want. You're too hard. It doesn't matter. I know what I look like before this, and I know what I look like now. So you don't get to change that.
I got called hard-nosed and harsh. It's like, that's a compliment to me. It's not an insult.
Yeah. Because there was a time when I was so soft, so people pleasing. I was a yes person. So if you want to call me that now, that's fine too. You know, you find your strength. And I always encourage the women and men on this journey to find your strength, find your voice, and the people that are in your corner will walk alongside you. So my next question to you is, let's talk about managing triggers when you're dealing with narcissistic abuse. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, you know, once you've been through narcissistic abuse and you've come out of it, whether you have children or not, you are going to be triggered emotionally because, you know, a lot of the times we come out of it with PTSD or CPTSD. If you have children, then you still have to have dealings with the narcissist. So they are going to say and do things that are going to trigger you. Even if you don't have children, there are going to be certain times when you're going to feel more emotional about certain things or triggered by seeing their name or a memory. And that's going to be hard. And those triggers very rarely go away, but we are able to manage them a lot better, and they don't affect us as badly as they did in the early days once we do that deep inner work. You're always going to you're going to be able to nip it in the bud as soon as it comes up, and then you deal with it, accept the emotion and feeling, think about where it's coming from, and then you move on. So instead of having it affect your whole day or week, you know, you can nip it in the bud and manage those triggers and emotions because they are going to come up. You're going to be able to manage them better once you do that deep healing work.
I love that because oftentimes, you know, and I'm going to ask you this question. Oftentimes people may say, oh, that triggered me. Oh, that triggered me. But I think you made a really good point when you talked about the triggers being connected to healing. And as the healing takes place, not that the triggers necessarily go away, but the way that they affect you is different.
Yeah, and also, I mean, this is hard because the ego wants to protect us. But when we're triggered, we really need to think about, okay, what is this showing me? What am I triggered about? And what can I learn from this? Because the triggers also show us where the growth is. Because if we're triggered by something, I mean, somebody was triggered by a swear word on, I think it was one of my posts, or maybe someone had sworn in the comments, or maybe both. And, you know, the intention is because their abuser used to swear. But, you know, my intention was not to abuse, and we need to work out, okay, if I was triggered by that, why am I triggered by that, and how can I address that, and how can I work on that? Because people are going to swear around you. That's just an example. You know.
Yeah, but I think that's a good example because I think we have to figure out, like you said, where those triggers happen, how they happen, and deal with them. We can't just say, oh my goodness, that triggered me. Okay, well, if that triggered, say that again. I'm sorry, I spoke over you.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, if we say that triggered me and that hurt me and then go into a ball,
right.
You're not learning anything from that. You need to address the trigger. Where did it come from? What is it? How can I fix it? How can I work on that? How can I manage it? You know?
Yeah, that's really, really good. Like really, really good advice. And I get it too, like with posts and stuff that I share or things that I talk about. Yeah, it's right. It may trigger you, but let's talk about why it triggers you. What is it exactly about that way the person said or what they said, or, you know, why did it trigger you? And I mean, I still have things that trigger me and I have to realize where are they, what happened, and how do I heal that? You know, whether like, there's an argument or something like that. I was going through recently going through the airport, and this guy was just like going off on his partner. I mean, off in like the worst way. And I found myself freezing up. I'm like, I realized I'm safe. He's definitely not talking to me, you know, but I realized, okay, well, that was something inside of me. I still don't like it. You know, I've been out for 10 years. I don't like to see those things like that. I mean, so I realized that it wasn't affecting me, but stuff like that, that's not safe for me. That environment right there wasn't good for me. And so it required me to remove myself from that space.
Exactly. And then manage rather than you be derailed for a week or a day, whatever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I can't give them that much power. You know what I mean? I refuse to give anything that much power at all whatsoever. I realized what it was, and in order, I have to protect myself. And it's our responsibility, I think, to decide what makes us safe and to create that safe space for ourselves.
Yes. Whether narc abuse don't realize what's safe because we've been in this environment for so long. But once you're out of it, you do gain that clarity, and you're able to see things a lot more clearly. Yes. You can establish what is safe and what isn't safe, but you need to be aware, really.
Yeah, and that's very, very true. That, you know, I read that statement. It's hard to heal in the same place that you got sick, and so we're not. If you're in the relationship, we're not expecting you to completely heal. But like she did, as an example, okay, I'm starting to recognize things. I see things happening. I realize I need to get out of this relationship. What steps can I take? We had a question real quick. If you have to communicate with your ex narc with children involved, what's the best way to engage as little as possible but still be civil?
Okay, so you need to go low contact or moderated contact. So I would stick to email only communication, because that way you have time to respond if they email you back. And you can also filter what you need to respond to, because when you communicate, they oftentimes like to wrap up other things and other dramas in the communication. So if it's something about drop-off and pickups or navigating the holidays, you need to be able to filter out what information is needed, what needs a response and what doesn't. You may even get emails that don't warrant a response, and that's okay. You don't have to answer them. And in terms of being civil, you don't need to be civil, but you don't need to be the opposite of civil. You just need to be factual. Stick to the facts. Date, time, what's happening.
I love that you said you don't have to be civil, just be factual. Pick up the kids, 3 o'clock, see you at the courthouse or whatever. Doesn't have to necessarily, but it has to be factual. And that's what we're dealing with. No emotions. We're not dealing with those. We're dealing with facts.
Not mean. Doesn't mean you're mean or bad or rude. You don't need to, they've taken too much already. You don't need to give any kind of leeway, because they will see any snippet of oh, hi, how are you, as an in, and they will try and manipulate you and try and hoover you. Don't risk it.
That's good. That's really, really great. I like how you said low or moderate communication. So this is for whoever asked a question in the comments. And be factual. You don't necessarily have to be the opposite of civil, but be factual. Speaking to, and I love how you talk about, because there's one thing I don't like is someone who talks real fast. And before next thing you know, you're answering a question, you're saying yes to something you didn't realize you were saying yes to. And oftentimes narcs sneak in there and ask questions and make comments, and you're all of a sudden like trying to figure out what you talked about.
What I just agreed to. So
that's why I love what you talked about. Email.
It gives you time. You don't have to respond straight away either. If something's not immediate, leave it a day or two. You don't have to respond straight away. Let your emotions calm so you can focus and think about your response. You're not going to worry about it for the next day, but just have a breather, take a step away. A lot of the times they want immediate responses. You don't have to give it just because they want it. I've been asked to reply ASAP and things like that. I purely do the opposite of that, because you are not going to control me anymore.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like, I love that reply ASAP. Well, why? Is it really? And is it 911? Probably not. But what happens is they were so used to controlling everything. And like, you're like a puppet on a string, do this, do that. And you're doing it. And you take your power back, email by email, conversation by conversation, or lack of conversation, lack of texting, lack of answering the phone call. And, I want to touch on Sarah being at the holiday season. I love how you said, even the hi, how are you? It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to the conversation of co-parenting. Yeah,
exactly. And, don't see the email also as supply. They will get supply any which way. It's not just face-to-face contact. So do not feed the beast. Do not give supply. Date, time, and the situation. That's all you need. And it may seem petty, I don't know, but this works for me. I take as long as I physically can to reply, because I do that on purpose so that I'm not jumping in response. I've been programmed and conditioned to jump at every email, every text back in the day. I'd respond straight away because there'd be trouble. No, you are your own person. You have your own agency. You are not controlled by them any longer. They like to think they do, and even years later, they will still think they do. And if you let them, they will.
They will. I love that. Let me just tell you how you're just sitting in all your power, Sarah. You're just like, I don't reply. It's not ASAP. It's like, I'll get to you. And the truth is, I love, because it sounds like you've trained yourself. Because back in the day, you used to have to reply. You used to have to answer the phone. And now it's like, okay, I see the email. I'll get back to you.
I'm talking about it easily now, but it takes practice. You're going to be thinking and trembling and thinking, oh my God, he wants me to reply. What's he going to say? Is another one going to come? But you just need to breathe and give yourself the time, because then you can respond instead of react.
I love it. Breathe. Take a moment.
Yeah.
And I love how at first you'll be shaking. At first you'll want to reply right away. At first you'll be like, oh my goodness, I have to. But moment after moment, time after time, day after day, as you start to, I'm in control of this. And I get to respond when it's necessary for me. I love how you're talking about they've taken too much already. We're not giving them anything else. You don't get to feed off of my emotions, off of my feelings, off of anything that I have. You don't get any of that anymore. I'm not giving you any more supply. So we have another question. Were there any specific experiences in recovery and thriving that you found particularly hard? I struggle with differentiating between pride and arrogance. I have fought so hard for pride, and my ex branded it as arrogance and destroyed it. So I think we're looking at, it's all the way up. It's kind of scrolled up, but between.
Okay, so your ex described it as arrogance. Okay, so that's another thing. As we heal, as you start to heal and do that deep inner core work, you will start to realize what is your voice and what is the narc's voice. The narc likes to implant negativity and self-doubt and all of the bad stuff into us. We, as we heal, start to sift and sort what's mine, what's theirs. So ego and arrogance, that's you listening to the narc and letting them dictate who you are and dictate yourself. So once you self-validate, once you do that deep healing work, that noise, you'll know the answer to that. You'll know that it is not arrogance. You will be very clear and set in who you are as a person. But right now, they still have an element of control because their voice is still there lingering.
It's so interesting, too, because pride, they don't want to see you have confidence, right? Yeah. And so, of course, it's going to call it arrogance, you know, because, of course, if you love yourself or you think you're amazing or beautiful or smart or intelligent, that's not good for them. That's not where they want you to be. So that pride and that proudness and that self-esteem and that self-worth, you better have that and own that, girl, because that's yours.
Yes.
You know, reprogram yourself to believe all the great things you think about yourself, because it's not arrogance. You have a right to feel proud of yourself. Mm-hmm. And we're not, he doesn't get to own that pride anymore. That it's confidence.
Yes, and they're very jealous as well. So he won't like the fact that you're able to cultivate that despite his efforts to destroy that. So take that as a compliment, I think.
Yeah. Let's take it. Oh, okay. I remember my ex-husband told me, he's like, you think you're so smart because you have all these degrees. I said, no, you think I'm so smart. I never mentioned them, but thank you very much. You think I'm so smart, because you tried to make it like a negative thing to me. Like, oh my goodness, why did I go back to school? No, I'm not giving you that. That's mine. I did that. You know, everything you said, I did. Yeah, I'm not going to give you that. So, okay. So can you talk a little bit about hovering? Somebody mentioned something about hovering. So what do you do when you have a hovering narc?
The Hoover tactic?
Yeah. Did I say hover? Yeah. Hoovering. Yeah.
So my first question is, unless you have children with them, there's no way that they should be hoovering you, because you're going to block them and go no contact everywhere. So I'm not sure if you have children with them or not.
I don't think this one is I think it's a parent or something for the hoovering.
Okay.
A relative.
If you have, it's a parent.
Yes, I believe so.
If you have parents who are narcs and you can't go no contact, then I would go low to moderated contact, and I would only communicate with them when you want to. Don't provide supply. Only address what you want to communicate with them. I mean, it's very difficult with family members because society tells us we need to love our family and respect them. I personally have gone no contact with a toxic person in my family, because I have worked too hard to allow that kind of behavior. I don't care. Their family are blood and title, but you don't get the entitlement to keep abusing me and gaslighting me and guilting and shaming me. So,
I love that. I love that. I love that you said, whether it's a family member or not, I've worked too hard to get where I am, and I can't allow you or anyone, blood, not blood, to come and ruin that. And I think that people can call it what they want, but like we talked about it earlier, it's protecting yourself. You have to, you know, because a narcissist, no matter if it's a boss or if it's a partner or if it's a parent, if they see a way in, they're going to take it.
They'll take it. And it is hard with family members. I'm not trying to say it's easy, but they are still people. And as long as you keep that abuse around you, it's going to be very hard to heal and focus on yourself. And you do need to protect yourself. You haven't been protected all this time. Now is the time that you have this awareness and education to protect your house. Protect yourself.
Yes, I love that. You couldn't do it before. You have the opportunity to do it now. So do it, and don't allow anybody to take it from you. So yes, thank you, Veronica, girl. I did. I got all the degrees I could. Now, sir, you know. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about why now. The healing part is really important, because I think that people. I can talk to people who are 70 years old and still haven't processed or healed trauma that they've carried for so long. So let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, healing, there is no step-by-step guide. There is no handbook on how to heal. what I say to my clients and people I work with is healing is like peeling the layers back of an onion, let's say. And the first few layers are going to be hard. They're going to be difficult. They're going to be uncomfortable because you have to work out, okay, who am I? How did this happen to me? What was it about me? What things about me do I need to work on because this went on longer than necessary, or I didn't see these signs? And as we do that inner work, the focus goes off the abusive person and it gets shifted back to us, because a lot of people, they focus on the narcissist. Why did they do this? How could they do this to me? What is it about me? It's how they treated you is exactly how they wanted to treat you and how they treat everyone they are in that kind of dynamic with. But there are things about us that can arm us so that we are not susceptible to that again, because we are targets for certain reasons. Kind, caring, compassionate empaths give too many chances. But once we get set in who we are, we set our boundaries very comfortably, we self-validate and we raise our self-esteem and confidence, and also cultivate self-love. Like, I thought that I had self-love because I didn't hate myself, I didn't put myself down, but I obviously was missing something in that self-love because I allowed someone to treat me in this way longer than necessary. So there are things we're going to have to maybe own up to, and there's also things that we're going to realize. We peel the layers back, hard and painful. That's what I help people do. I guide and support them through that journey because it isn't easy. And we're going to discover things maybe that we have buried or that we didn't realize. And usually when there's one person like this in our lives, we find that there was another one somewhere down the track, whether it's a parent, guardian, or someone close to us. And it's not like you see them everywhere, but you are more honed in on the traits. And it doesn't mean you have to shut yourself away in a box.
No.
You have to live your life. But you must do the work so that when they come at you, you are not proof.
Yeah.
You are not derailed. You are not penetrated. And, it's practice. It's daily practice and intention on making healing your priority. Not big steps, it's baby steps. Big steps are going to disappoint us because if we get derailed, we're going to maybe take a few steps back. We're going to get really demotivated. But if we take those small steps daily and working with somebody like a coach, like myself, or therapist, I think they need to have experience in NPD because, like my experience and other people's, the therapists and counselors and psychologists, what they can help them with is very limited because they don't understand narc abuse.
Yeah. Narc abuse is very specific. And I say the same thing with domestic violence. I love a good therapist. I am a therapist, but you need to have someone that specializes in the domestic violence or the narcissistic abuse. Like Sarah, you have to find someone that can really specifically tag into that you need help with. I love how you talk about making it a daily practice and being intentional about it, being intentional about your yeses and your nos, being intentional about who you let into your space, being intentional about if and when you reply to certain stuff from your narc. Go ahead.
Well, there's a lot going on when you're healing. You still got to function. You've still got to work. You've still got to look after your children. You still have to parallel parent. So as we are trying to heal, we get distracted with life. So It's not so easy. That's why you may feel like you're not making progress, or you're not going fast enough, or that you're still struggling. And it could be like a year down the track and you're maybe beating up on yourself that you haven't made enough progress. It isn't. You've been through trauma. A lot of people don't realize that narc abuse is domestic violence. It is domestic abuse. I don't care what other people say. Some person on my post said violence means physical. It's like, no, bluff.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's so ignorant. And the truth is, I think people just don't know, or they have such assumptions, or that they think they know, but they really don't. If you guys have any questions, we have just about 5 more minutes with Sarah. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I wanted to talk really quickly how you talked about shifting the focus to yourself. Oftentimes, I'm sure you see it in your work too. We talk to survivors who are so focused on their abuser and the person that traumatized them. And if we would take our eyes off of them and put it on us, what we'd be looking at would be totally different.
Yes. Yeah, and it's natural and normal to do that because we want to know why, how, but I love them and this. How could someone do this? Because you don't feel and think that way. You have empathy. You're, normal. So you're never going to work out why and how, and it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're out and you can heal and you have your life ahead of you to focus on yourself and your children and living your best life.
Yes.
And healing is an inside job. When we are internally focused, that's when we're going to make the biggest kind of gains in and growth in our healing journey. If we keep looking outwards, we are not going to heal as quickly. And because we're always looking outside of ourselves for answers, it comes from inside, and it becomes not even about the narcissist. And this is a hard one for people to get their head around, but they were a messenger of what we need to heal. There were things within us that predisposed us to this. Not that what they did wasn't awful, and it isn't awful, but there are things that happened before, and we have to trace it back and work on that, but also move forward. We weren't put on this earth to be suffering like this,
Nope.
and I don't want people to do that,
I say that all the time. I'm like, we were not created for this. This is not life. But when we go back to something you said really quickly, you're never going to really figure out why and how. Why did they do that? Why are they like that? How could they hurt me? You're looking for answers that they can't answer and won't answer honestly, and that you can't answer honestly for yourself. Your focus, I would encourage you with everything inside of me to turn into your internal focus on yourself, and and take baby steps. I really like how you talked about, and this is hard because a lot of people don't want to do the work on this, but owning up to our own part, right? And how we stayed longer than necessary. And what, I saw this and I had always said, Sarah, I was like, if anybody ever hits me, I'm leaving. If anybody ever, I'm gone. And then here I am in this relationship years in, and I'm like,
yeah. Well, I just thought domestic violence and domestic abuse was physical. That's all I knew. And that's all we're taught. We don't know about psychological abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse. Well, we know about sexual abuse, but spiritual abuse, we don't know anything except what we get drummed into us, which is physical abuse. But all of these other things happen, I think, before people get physical anyway.
Of course. It leads to that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's go to the thriving part real quick. If you guys have any questions, throw them in the chat before we get out of here. But let's talk about thriving, because I know for yourself, you're thriving. I'm thriving. Our desire for everyone we see and work with, and is for them to thrive. We don't just want you to be like, I'm a survivor. I want you to thrive, right? And so what does that look like?
Well, because you've never seen it before, it's very hard to visualize it. I know that for you victims and survivors, it's very hard for you to see a life that is beautiful and blossoming, and where you get to a place of actually being truly happy within yourself, and all your interactions and relationships are healthy. So thriving is when you are on this journey, you peel back the layers, you do that healing work, you make it a daily practice. That journey becomes more beautiful because you get closer to who you truly are. And all of these negative people and toxicity falls away. It's hard to visualize and it's hard to see because you may not have ever experienced it, but it is there for you on the other side. But you have to decide and take action on your life, because no one else is going to choose that for you. Once you decide you want to take action and you are strong in that conviction, that's when the doors open for you. But you have to decide, you have to step out. And it's like taking that leap of faith into the unknown, because you either stay stuck where you are and you know what you're going to get, or you take that step out and it can't get any worse. It can only get better. And I think I did a post the other day that I can't remember how I worded it, but it's just how with healing, like, things start happening.
That's good.
But things start happening. Whereas if you stay where you are, you get more of the same. That's the guarantee.
That's good. I love that. Once you start healing, things start to happen. And I mean, if we could just challenge you and encourage you to hope and believe and give yourself a chance to think for a second that there might be something on the other side of what you're enduring, because we weren't created to live in pain. We weren't created to live in abuse. And I always tell people, listen, someone can abuse you to your core without laying a finger on you. It's very, very possible. So we want you to, and I love how over time, step by step, you start to trust yourself, because like literally, I didn't trust a thing that I said because he had me believing everything I said was wrong or crazy or not smart. And so you start to trust yourself, Sarah, and then you can start making decisions for yourself. I can trust how much school my kids go to. I can trust shopping for myself. I can trust, and it starts small, and it starts to grow. So I love when you talked about that. But we want to encourage you to know that, well, you have to do the work. Like, you can't skip that, right? You got to do the work. But it also, we want you to, if you guys have heard my story, I remember watching the night I left my ex-husband, I was watching a woman on YouTube, and she talked about how she was in an abusive relationship. She got out, she was remarried, and like had this whole life. And I was like, wait a whole minute. You mean to tell me that what I'm living in is not it? And that night I packed up my kids and I left because someone had told me and showed me, I saw with my own eyes that there was life after. And so that's what we want for you guys.
And I just want people to know, like, there is nothing special about you or me. We are where you were. We were where you were, sorry.
Absolutely.
Where you are.
Absolutely.
You just have to make the decision and find your motivation and strive for more, because you deserve more. I want more for you. And Lisa wants more for you.
Yeah, and we do.
You know, there's support out there, and you never have to travel this journey alone. You've been alone too long, and it's very isolating. It's very lonely, but, you know, empower yourself and decide and take action for a better life, because it is possible. And I didn't know what was on the other side. I didn't know I was going to be doing this. I didn't know how my life would pan out. I had no idea. All I knew is that I couldn't stay there, because I knew what was going to be the ultimate end of that.
I love that you said you didn't know what was on the other side. You just knew that you couldn't stay where you were. And that could be you today, that you're watching and you're like, I don't like where I am. I hate it. I don't know what's on the other side of this, but I want you to know that there's possibly something. So I would encourage you to take the chance. I'm putting up Sarah's information. Facebook is Narc Proof and Thriving, and she is all over Instagram, y'all. So go ahead and check her out. She also has a link to all of her other pages on her Instagram page, narc_proof_and_thriving. She in January she starts a healing group. It's called Her Group. Did I write that?
Yeah, that's the group program starting in January.
And she talks about healing, getting unstuck, putting tools into action, because you said it today. You said you can watch a video, you can do this, but if you don't get to peeling back those layers,
it's not going to happen. And watching videos and reading memes is great, and reading quotes, like, you're educating yourself, but it feels like you're doing something, but unless you apply these principles to your life, you will not get as far as you would like to in your healing journey, because you're not applying it to your daily life and putting it into action.
Yeah, and get with someone who can take the journey with you, because it's not a meme or a video away. It's definitely, you have to put in the work. Yeah, we're so glad that you guys were inspired. So glad that you needed to hear this. Make sure you go follow her. Listen, I follow her. She's amazing. And check out, she has a group starting in January. So thanks for hanging with us, you guys. Sarah, thank you so much. I appreciate you and your expert advice on narc abuse. We'll see you guys later, okay? See ya. Bye. Sarah, you don't go anywhere. We're going to just say bye to them, okay? All right.